All right, buckle up, because today we're diving into ancient China to meet a guy who pretty much flipped the script on how to win in a world gone totally bonkers.
Sounds intense.
It is. We're talking warlords duking it out, empires collapsing faster than a house of cards, and corruption, well, let's just say it was basically part of the daily diet back then.
So we're talking about the Warring States period.
Bingo. A time when, let's face it, our modern-day stress would probably feel like a relaxing spa day compared to the chaos those folks were dealing with.
Yikes. Not exactly a time you'd expect, deep philosophical insights to emerge from.
And that's what's so mind-blowing. Right in the middle of this mess pops up this guy, Lao-Tzu. Not some ripped warrior or power-hungry king, but a sage, a thinker, who basically said, hey, maybe there's a better way to deal with all this craziness.
Yeah, his approach was pretty revolutionary for the time.
Totally. So today we're going deep into his life and teachings, specifically his masterpiece, the Tao-Te-Ching, which, let me tell you, is like a cheat code to navigating life's ups and downs. But first, who was this guy? What made him decide to ditch the whole power struggle thing and embrace, well, chill vibes?
Well, for starters, he wasn't exactly some nobody. He was actually a high-ranking official in the zoo court, the keeper of the royal library.
Whoa, wait, the royal library? So surrounded by scrolls and ancient wisdom all day, every day. Talk about a book lover's dream job.
Right, you'd think he'd be living the dream. But here's the thing, Lao-Tzu saw past all the glitz and glam of the court life.
Yeah, maybe he had one too many behind-the-scenes tours and realized it wasn't as glamorous as it seemed.
Exactly. The Zhou dynasty, which was supposed to be the big cheese, the symbol of order, was crumbling from the inside out.
Like a termite-infested mansion, all fancy on the outside but rotten at the core.
Yeah, and Lao-Tzu had a front row seat to the whole drama greed, power trips, you name it, he saw it all.
So did he try to fix things, stage a coup, write a tell-all expose?
He chose a different path, a path of quiet defiance.
Now that sounds intriguing. Tell me more.
Well, he decided to peace out, literally, left the whole power game behind, embraced simplicity, and, according to legend, rode off into the sunset on a water buffalo.
On a water buffalo? Seriously.
Well,
I mean, that's like the ultimate mic drop. Trading a chariot for, well, a water buffalo. It's like you saying, see you later, I'm out of here to find some real peace.
It's such a powerful image, right? This rejection of worldly ambition, this embrace of, well, a slower, more intentional way of life.
Yeah, it makes you kind of wonder what we're all rushing around for, doesn't it? So he just rides off into the sunset and that's it? The end of the story?
Not quite. This is where things get even more interesting. On his way out, he has this chance encounter with Yin Si, the gatekeeper.
Okay, so this gatekeeper, what's so special about him?
Well, Yin Si recognizes Lao-Tzu's wisdom, sees the value in his insights, and basically convinces him to share his knowledge with the world.
Smart move. Don't let that wisdom walk out the door.
And that, my friend, is how the Tao-Te-Ching was born.
Wow, talk about a legacy moment. One conversation and bam, a book that's going to change the course of history. So what's this Tao-Te-Ching all about? Give us the lowdown.
Imagine getting life advice in the form of really profound poetry. That's kind of what the Tao-Te-Ching is. It's a collection of 81 verses, each one packed with wisdom distilled into this beautiful poetic language.
Like a pocket guide to, well, everything.
In a way, yeah, it covers a lot of ground, but one of the core teachings is this idea of life flowing like water.
Water? Okay, I'm intrigued. How so?
Think about it, water's soft, yielding, right? But it can carve canyons, wear down the hardest rock, it adapts to its surroundings, finds its way around obstacles, it's persistent, always moving, always changing.
Yeah, you don't want to mess with water. It can be pretty powerful, even though it seems so, I don't know, gentle.
Exactly. And Lao-Tzu actually says, and I'm paraphrasing here, that the softest thing in the world can overcome the hardest.
Whoa, that's deep. It's like, instead of always trying to muscle our way through life, maybe we should be more like water flexible, adaptable, finding the path of least resistance.
That's the idea. It's not about being passive, but about understanding that sometimes yielding, going with the flow, can actually be the most effective way to get where you need to go.
It's like that saying, bend so you don't break, right? Okay, so this all ties into this concept of the Tao, or the way I've heard this term thrown around. But what does it actually mean in the context of, Lao-Tzu's teachings?
So the Tao, it's like the underlying principle of the universe, the force that governs everything.
Kind of like the source code, the operating system that makes everything run.
Yeah, something like that. It's not something you can control, but something you can align yourself with. It's about understanding the natural order of things and working with it, not against it.
So less about forcing our will on the world and more about understanding how to, ride the wave.
You got it. And this is where Lao-Tzu gets really interesting, because he's basically saying that true peace and harmony come not from imposing control, but from letting go.
Letting go, that seems counterintuitive. In a world that's always telling us to hustle, to achieve, to be in charge.
Right, it's a totally paradigm shift. But Lao-Tzu is all about challenging conventional wisdom. He's saying that true strength comes from understanding when to yield, when to surrender.
Whoa, mind blown. So less go hard or go home and more go with the flow?
Exactly. It's about finding that balance, that harmony between seemingly opposite forces. And that's just scratching the surface of what this guy was all about.
I can already feel my perspective shifting, and we're just getting started. We'll be right back after a quick break to explore more of Lao-Tzu's mind-blowing insights, so stay tuned. All right, so we left off with Lao-Tzu basically dropping the mic on the whole power struggle thing and riding off into the sunset in search of, well, a more authentic way of life.
Yeah, pretty bold move for a guy who was, basically a rock star scholar in his time.
Total rebel. But let's be real. His ideas of peace, harmony, going with the flow, they probably didn't exactly go over well with the, let's call them the power players of his day.
Oh, totally. Remember, this was the warring states period. Everyone's vying for power, trying to outsmart, outmaneuver each other.
Yeah, not exactly a time for, like, kumbaya and holding hands.
Not so much. So you can imagine how Lao-Tzu's teachings might have been perceived, right? Kind of radical, maybe even a bit naive.
Like, dude, what are you talking about? We're trying to win a war here, not start a meditation circle.
Exactly. But here's the thing. Lao-Tzu wasn't trying to win anyone over. He wasn't interested in forcing his ideas on anyone. He simply lived by his own truth. And if people weren't ready to listen, well, that was their choice.
It's like he understood that real change comes from within, not from trying to impose your will on others.
Absolutely. And that's where we see Lao-Tzu's ultimate power move. He walked away, not in defeat, but in this incredibly powerful act of liberation.
It takes serious guts to walk away from everything, especially when you're at the top of your game. Like, didn't he worry about his legacy, about being forgotten?
That's the beauty of it. By letting go of the need to control his legacy, he actually ensured its survival. His disappearance just added to his mystique.
It's like the less he clung to his ego, the more powerful his message became.
Exactly. Some stories say he journeyed westward, vanished into the mountains, his fate unknown.
Like, he literally became one with the Tao, embodying that principle of detachment even in his own life story.
Yeah, it's pretty poetic, isn't it? He disappears, yet his ideas take root and spread like wildfire.
So how did his teachings go from, like, a collection of verses to a whole philosophical movement?
Well, his words resonated with people. They offered a different way of seeing the world, a path to peace and harmony in a time of constant conflict.
So it wasn't just a philosophy for, like, hermits and scholars. It actually influenced how people live their everyday lives.
Totally. Taoism became this foundational philosophy in Chinese culture. It shaped art, medicine, governance, even martial arts.
Whoa, wait, martial arts. How does that fit in?
Well, think about it. The comfortables of yielding, of using your opponent's energy against them, those are all rooted in Taoist philosophy.
Mind blown. I never thought about it like that. So we're talking about a philosophy that's influenced, like, every aspect of Chinese culture.
Pretty much. And the crazy part is, these ideas, born from one man's quiet defiance, are still relevant today, thousands of years later.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about it right now, aren't we? So clearly there's something about Lao-Tzu's message that still speaks to us. But what's in it for us? Like, how can we actually apply these ancient teachings to our modern lives? That's what I want to know.
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And honestly, I think Lao-Tzu's greatest gift to us is this reminder that the key to navigating the chaos isn't about fighting harder, but about finding that inner stillness, that place of calm amidst the storm.
Easier said than done, right? Especially in a world that's constantly telling us to hustle, to strive, to be in control.
It definitely goes against the grain. But Lao-Tzu would argue that this constant striving, this need to control, is actually the source of a lot of our suffering.
It's like we're so busy trying to force things to happen that we miss out on the beauty of just letting things be.
That's it. And it brings us to another key teaching from the Tao-Te-Ching, the importance of balance.
Balance. Okay, I'm listening.
Remember that whole yin and yang thing? It's not about good versus evil, but about recognizing that seemingly opposite forces are actually interconnected and complementary.
So like light and darkness, action and stillness, masculine and feminine. They're not at war with each other. They're actually two sides of the same coin.
Exactly. And finding that balance, that harmony between those forces is essential for living in accordance with the Tao. It's about recognizing when to push forward and when to hold back, when to speak up and when to listen.
And that can apply to, like, everything, right? Work-life balance, relationships, even just how we approach our day-to-day lives.
Absolutely. Think about it. If you're constantly in yang mode, pushing, striving, achieving, you're going to burn out eventually. You need those moments of yin, rest, reflection, receptivity to recharge and reconnect with yourself.
It's like you can't have the highs without the lows, the sunshine without the rain. It's all part of the natural cycle.
Exactly. And embracing this concept of duality, of finding that balance, can bring a sense of peace and harmony to our lives. It allows us to see the world in a more holistic way, to appreciate the interconnectedness of all things.
So we find that balance, that harmony, and then what? How do we actually live it? How do we put it into practice in the real world?
That, my friend, is where Lao Tzu's concept of Wu Wei comes in. And that's a whole other rabbit hole we're going to dive into when we come back at part 3.
Okay, I'm hooked. We'll be right back after a quick break to explore this Wu Wei thing, so don't go anywhere. All right, we're back, and my brain's still swirling with this whole Wu Wei thing. It's like, how do you know when you're in the flow versus, just forcing it?
Yeah, it can be tricky to grasp.
Tricky is an understatement. It's like our whole culture is built around, hustling and striving and making things happen.
Right, we're conditioned to think that if we're not constantly pushing, we're falling behind.
Exactly. So how do we reconcile that with this idea of Wu Wei, of effortless action? It seems kind of, contradictory.
It is a bit of a paradox, isn't it? But maybe thinking about it less like doing nothing and more like, I don't know, maybe like effortless effort might help.
Effortless effort. Okay, now you're really messing with my brain.
I know, bear with me. Think about it like this. Have you ever watched a really skilled surfer?
Yeah, actually, I used to live near the beach, so I've seen a few.
Okay, so they don't control the waves, right? They study them, they wait for the right moment, and then they paddle like crazy to catch that wave.
Yeah, but once they're up, it's like they're barely even trying, just gliding effortlessly.
Exactly. They're not fighting the wave, they're flowing with it, using its power to propel themselves forward.
Okay, I'm starting to see it. So it's not about sitting back and doing nothing. It's about choosing your battles, putting in the effort when it's needed, but then surrendering to the flow, trusting that things will unfold as they should.
You got it. And that trust is key. It's about recognizing that we don't always have to be in control, that sometimes the widest course of action is to let go, to allow things to happen naturally.
Which is like the opposite of what we're usually told, right?
Totally. But Lao Tzu would say that this constant striving, this need to control every outcome, is actually the source of a lot of our suffering.
It's like we're so busy trying to force things that we miss out on the opportunities that are right in front of us.
Exactly. We get so fixated on the destination that we forget to enjoy the journey.
And that brings us back to this idea of balance, right? The yin and yang.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that seemingly opposite forces are actually interconnected and complementary.
So, like action and stillness, effort and surrender, they're not at war with each other. They're actually two sides of the same coin.
Precisely. And finding that balance, that harmony between those forces is essential for living in accordance with the Tao.
It's like you can't have the highs without the lows, the sunshine without the rain. It's all part of the natural cycle.
Exactly. And embracing that duality, that interplay of opposites, can bring a sense of peace and harmony to our lives.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Lao-Tzu and the Tao-Te-Ching, what's the one thing you'd want our listeners to walk away with?
I think it's this. True strength lies not in dominance or control, but in aligning ourselves with the natural flow of life. It's about cultivating that inner stillness, finding balance in all things, and embracing the wisdom of Wu Wei.
Beautifully put. And for anyone listening who wants to explore this further, I highly recommend picking up a copy of the Tao-Te-Ching. It's a deceptively simple book, but one that can offer a lifetime of wisdom.
Remember, it's not just a book to be read, it's an invitation to experience. Put these principles into practice in your own life and see where they lead you.
You might be surprised at the peace and clarity you find along the way. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.